So please give a warm welcome to John McDonnell.
Just briefly, because you've had a long meeting. I've come from the House of Commons, and I've got to get back there for a vote. And to be frank, moving from that place to here is such an ascent. To be frank, it's humbling to be in the room. It's humbling to be in the room with someone who served 16 months of fighting the fascists. Yeah. I've only spent a couple of nights in cells, and people might know that story. It's too boring to recite. But I visit lots of constituents and others, and I chair the Guildford 4 campaign for 14 odd years or whatever. And when you leave people in prison and you come away, you realise what you're coming away from and how lucky you are to be on the outside rather than the inside, and you realise what sacrifices people have made. So it's humbling. It's humbling, to be frank, to be in the same room with the families that are campaigning, because it's so hard to maintain your confidence and your spirit when you've got the whole of the state against you, just trying to get the truth. So it's humbling, and any support we can give you, we obviously will. Can I say also it's humbling to be in the room with Guardian journalists who exposed the undercover police. Climate Camp came to my constituency as part of the anti-third runway campaign, and 1,000 people turned up overnight and set up a village, and I welcomed them as new constituents. So therefore was involved in the organisation of trying to get the water supplies on the campus. And I thought this was going too smoothly. I didn't realise the person responsible for the coordination was Mark Kennedy, a police officer. Fantastic tattoos. That God knows how he's going to live those ones down. But at one point in time, it's interesting, you just didn't know whether it was a police officer or not. But what's interesting, when we were on the picket line outside McDonnell's at Oxford Street, I was talking to some of the cops then, and I've met the Police Federation separately, because as you saw at the weekend, they're now going to privatise the cops. And they're coming now for their pensions and conditions as well, as part of the Windsor report. So the Police Federation are now developing their campaigns, and I'm urging them to have a demonstration. and we should offer to steward that. And when we get near Parliament Square, what I want you to do is kettle them in batteries. And then as we enter Parliament Square itself, I'd like you to undertake a large number of citizens' arrests, because that's now outlawed as a result of the vehement and vicious campaign they waged against the late Brian Hoare to get rid of him. Can I just say also, it's a privilege to be in the same room as those who are involved in Occupy. I think we didn't do enough, to be frank, and this is an admission of guilt on my own part. On the night that the destruction of the camp took place, I think the Labour and Trade Union movement didn't do enough to protect them, to be frank. And we need to learn a lesson. And we were caught on the hop. There wasn't enough information going out, and we didn't have a Labour movement strategy for dealing with that. Some of the Christians did. They tried to surround with prayer. We should have surrounded it with a picket line. And I think we need to just learn the lessons and maybe apologise to some of those of the occupying movement that we didn't support them enough. And learn the lesson that next time, whatever the form of protest, we have to be there to support. Let me just say this very briefly. The objective reality of this is that the demonstrations and the occupations and the industrial action are not taking place because this is some form of new entertainment or this is part of our overall culture. They're taking place because of the objective reality, well, it's been said, others have said it, 3 million unemployed by the end of the year, 1 million young people unemployed, 2 million on short-time, forced short-time or part-time working, people losing their jobs then immediately being designated as scroungers, people losing their benefits for the slightest reason, people with disabilities losing all sorts of income whatsoever, and people losing their homes as a result of evictions. Immense human suffering has taken place as a result of this recession. On a scale, I think it is on going back to a scale now, what happened in the 80s, and maybe for some families now, the suffering that goes back right the way back to the 30s. And there is inevitably a reaction to that. Peter Taylor Gooby's work a couple of weeks ago that was published, where he basically looked at the last 3 decades of wherever austerity measures have been introduced and there hasn't been popular support of any sort for them, it results in strikes, demonstrations and civil disobedience. And that's an academic saying, advising the government, that's an inevitability. And they know that. In government, they know that. So if you're planning in government, you're sitting around that cabinet table, or you're the Home Secretary, you are surrounding yourselves with advisors from the security services and the police to advise you on what you should do to counter that. Because you're going to drive these austerity measures through no matter what, because that's the ideological and economic imperative that you have on your agenda. So it's inevitable what they're going to do is ensure that they close down as many demonstrations as they possibly can, give the powers to the police to use whatever physical resources they have. And you saw during the riots all the debate about bringing the army in, the plastic bullets and the water cannon, and they were on the edge of that. So they're inevitably going to say to the state forces, use whatever force is necessary to stabilise the situation. That's inevitable. Use whatever force is necessary. In addition to that, part of that use of force is to make examples of people so that others are disincentivised to come forward and campaign as well. So every political prisoner that's been arrested in these recent demonstrations, because that's what they are, they're not criminals, and we shouldn't allow them to be designated in that way. They are political prisoners. Every political prisoner that's been taken off the street, every student and everyone else who is involved in action and prosecuted for that, has simply been made an example of to prevent hundreds and thousands, if not millions of others to come forward. And we've got to expose that. We've got to explain that to people. These aren't innocent victims, someone who just made a wrong judgment at any time. These are people protesting against the austerity measures on our behalf. Part of our movement, part of our society. And they're being taken out, one, because they don't want them there mobilising again, but secondly, they're taken out so the message goes out to everybody else. You come forward and we will brutalise you, we will beat you up and we'll put you in prison. That's the message, isn't it? It's blindingly obvious. That's what states do every time they're confronted with resistance. If that's what they do, what do we do? Well, it's obvious. It's blindingly obvious. What's the strength that we have? Well, there's 2 strengths, aren't there? One is we withdraw our labour, so it's industrial action. And the other is we have a strength in mass numbers. We are the mass, they are the few. It's as simple as that. So the way that we mobilise now is actually we mobilise en masse. So every time there's an action, no matter who calls it, whatever the action is in terms of protest, we have a responsibility on us, a duty on us now, to turn up and be part of that mass action. That's it, isn't it? There's no other lesson now to be learnt from all of this. No other lesson. So we've heard of some of the actions that are taking place over the next few months. And I think what we've got to do now is sit down individually in our groups, whatever group we're in, whatever union we're in, whatever community we're working in, even down to the level of family, to talk about the role that we can play. How can we turn up? Are we the banner makers? Are we the marchers? Are we the people who will go on the picket lines? We've got to examine the role that we can play. And I've said it before, whatever your talent, resist. If you sing, sing resistance. If you write, write resistance. If you speak, speak resistance. If you film, film resistance. Whatever you do, though, you've got to recognise you have a responsibility to resist. Otherwise, they will break us. Now, what's interesting is lesson after lesson that's been learnt in recent months, that when individual disputes have happened, whatever the law says, if you mobilise en masse, we win. And you know, the Sparks disputes have been phenomenal. Turn up on a Wednesday morning at 6 o'clock in the morning, you've got 200 or 300 people there, and then they discover that the contractors are having their dinner in Park Lane. So they go to the dinner and they block Park Lane, and the cops couldn't arrest them because they couldn't get through the traffic jam to arrest them. That's the mass sort of action that's now developing right the way across action by action, because people are learning their strength and learning their abilities. So I think that's the lesson from here on in. There's nothing more that needs to be said. You just have to identify what role you can play, what talents that you've got, and you throw it hell-bent into the resistance movement itself. We just have a responsibility. And it's going to get worse. It isn't going to get better. There's no lift in the economy. There's going to be a double dip or we scrape along the bottom. So by the time we get to the autumn, they'll be coming back for more austerity measures, more privatisations, more cuts in benefits, more cuts in public services. So I think as that anger builds within society, because you've got two psychological responses, haven't you? Either fright or fight. Fright, we saw a lot of it in the 80s, fright, which was depression and run away and give up. But we also saw people fighting back. And I think this time round, actually, people are willing to fight. So what we've got to do now is recognise this fight is going to go on for the next year or two as they come back with wave and wave of more austerity measures. So we've got to be stronger and mobilise more widely. And as unemployment grows and more families are affected, more will be drawn into that struggle. But we've got to give them confidence that we can win. And we can win because we're the many, they're the few. Finally this, those people who are suffering as a result of what's happened, that are being imprisoned, that are being dragged through the courts themselves, of course we have a responsibility to stand shoulder to shoulder with them all the way through and offer them whatever succour and comfort we possibly can, physical support, whatever we can, but also for their families as well, because the families suffer just as much as those people inside as well because of the worry and stress that it causes. And part of our responsibility there is to show real comradeship and real solidarity with those families. And actually, by showing that solidarity, we should say we're proud to be associated with them. This is not something that someone should walk away from or in any way feel that it's inappropriate or wrong. We should be proud. These people have gone to prison because they're part of the mass, but they were at the forefront of the campaign and they stood strong. And their families are standing strong as well. And in that way, we'll defeat them. We will win this campaign. We will change this society. We'll change it on the basis of mass action and courage and determination and solidarity. Solidarity.